Chapter 1. The Slap. March 20th, Robert's birthday. For 32 years, Elena Vance had roasted a chicken on this date. Even after cancer hollowed him out and silence replaced his laugh, she still marked the day. Rituals matter. They anchor memory. But this year, she wasn't in her own kitchen. She stood outside her daughter's townhouse at 6:58 p.m., holding a bottle of red wine and a pie she didn't expect anyone to eat. The porch light flickered faintly. The curtains were drawn, though the sun hadn't fully set. She rang the bell. The door opened almost instantly. Ariana stood there. Her daughter's smile was precise, measured. It didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Mom." Elena leaned in and kissed her cheek. Her skin felt cool. "You look tired," Elena said softly. "I'm fine. Just busy." Behind Ariana, Mark's voice carried from the dining room. "Is that Elena? We were just talking about you." Elena stepped inside. The house smelled like rosemary and lemon polish. Everything was immaculate. Too immaculate. The dining table was already set, plates aligned as if measured. Mark appeared in the hallway, sleeves rolled up, smile wide. "Elena." He extended a hand instead of offering a hug. "Happy Sunday." She took it briefly. His grip lingered a second too long. "Happy Sunday," she replied. From the dining room, Helen's voice chimed in. "We kept everything warm." Ariana insisted. Helen Whitmore sat at the head of the table as though she owned it. Pearl necklace, crisp blouse, spine straight, eyes sharp. Elena noticed that. Head of the table. Not her daughter. Not her husband. Helen. "Well," Helen said, smiling thinly. "Family dinners are important. They keep women grounded." Ariana moved quickly to the kitchen. "I'll bring the roast." Elena watched her go. Her shoulders were tight. Movements careful, like someone performing. They sat. Mark carved the meat, narrating the process as if hosting a cooking show. "It's about patience, timing, discipline." Helen nodded approvingly. "Ariana is learning." Elena folded her napkin onto her lap. "She's always learned quickly." Mark smiled without warmth. "There's always room for improvement." The words were light. The tone wasn't. Dinner began. Small talk. Controlled laughter. Mark dominating conversation with stories about work, about difficult clients, about how exhausting it was to manage expectations. Ariana barely spoke. When she did, Mark corrected details. "Actually, it wasn't Thursday, Ari. It was Wednesday." "Oh, right," she murmured. Helen's eyes tracked every exchange like a referee. Elena felt it now, the tension beneath the tablecloth. "Ariana," Helen said suddenly, "the potatoes are a bit dry." I can bring gravy." Mark sighed softly. "We talked about this, Ari." "I know. I'm sorry. Sorry." "For potatoes." Elena's fingers tightened slightly around her fork. Then it happened. Ariana reached for the water pitcher. Her hand brushed the stem of her glass. A single, harmless splash tipped onto the tablecloth. Barely noticeable, but the sound, glass against ceramic, cut through the room. Silence. Mark's jaw hardened. It shifted so fast Elena almost doubted what she saw. "Are you serious?" he asked quietly. "I'm sorry, it was just..." The first slap came sharp and clean. The sound cracked through the dining room like a gunshot. Elena didn't move. The second slap followed immediately. Harder. Ariana gasped. The third one snapped her head sideways. Her chair scraped violently against the floor as she lost balance. Mark stood. He shoved her. Not wildly. Not emotionally. Deliberately. Ariana hit the hardwood, shoulder first. For a fraction of a second, no one breathed. Helen clapped. Actually clapped. That's how she learns to behave. The words floated in the air like poison. Elena felt something cold settle into her spine. 30 seconds. She counted them without meaning to. 1. Ariana curled slightly on the floor, stunned. 5. Mark adjusted his cuffs. 10. Helen sipped her wine. 15. No one moved to help Ariana. 20. Elena's heartbeat slowed instead of racing. 25. This was not shock. This was calculation. 30. Elena set her napkin down with precision. She reached into her handbag. Mark smirked faintly. "Let's not dramatize this." Her phone was already recording. It had been recording since she sat down, an old habit from depositions and hostile negotiations. She stood. "Ariana," she said calmly, "stay where you are." Mark laughed lightly. "Oh, come on, Elena." It was a correction, not a crime. She met his eyes. "Assault," she said evenly. "3 counts. And battery." Helen scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. This is marriage." Elena pressed a contact on her phone. The line connected immediately. "Commander Miller," she said. "This is Elena Vance. I need officers at 214 Willow Creek Drive. Domestic violence in progress." Mark's smile faltered. "You're not serious." "I am." Helen stood abruptly. "You will not ruin my son's reputation over a household misunderstanding." Elena didn't look at her. "You applauded the assault." Helen froze. "That makes you complicit." Mark stepped closer. "You have no proof." Elena tilted her phone slightly, so he could see the red recording icon. His face drained a shade. "You recorded dinner?" he demanded. "I record patterns," she replied. Ariana slowly pushed herself up, hand trembling against her cheek. A red imprint was already forming. Mark turned to her. "Tell her it was nothing." Ariana opened her mouth. No sound came. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Mark laughed again, but it was thinner now. "You think this is going to hold?" "My uncle sits on the magistrate bench." Elena's voice remained steady. "Then he'll enjoy reading the report." Helen grabbed her purse. "This is disgraceful. What will people say?" Elena finally looked at her. "I don't care what people say." The knock at the door was firm, authoritative. 2 officers entered. "Evening," one said. "We received a call." Elena gestured calmly toward Ariana. "Victim is here. Perpetrator is standing beside the dining table." Mark raised his hand, slightly amused. "Officers, this is a family exaggeration." The younger officer noticed Ariana's cheek. "Sir, turn around." Mark blinked. "Excuse me." "Turn around." The laughter disappeared. "You're actually arresting me?" "Yes, sir." Helen stepped forward. "This is absurd." "He is a respected, ma'am," the older officer said firmly. "Step back." Handcuffs clicked. Metal on bone. Ariana flinched at the sound. Mark looked at Elena, fury now naked in his eyes. "You just destroyed your daughter's marriage." Elena held his gaze. "No," she said quietly. "You did." Helen's voice rose into hysteria. "Do you know what this will do to our name? Our standing?" Elena's expression didn't change. The officers guided Mark toward the door. Neighbors' porch lights flicked on. Curtains shifted. Mark's earlier confidence was gone now, replaced with something brittle. As they stepped outside, he tried one last sneer. "This isn't over." Elena walked to the doorway, stopping just short of the threshold. Her voice was calm enough to slice. "You should have checked who her mother was." Chapter 2, Before the cracks. Before the silence. Before the flinch. Before Ariana learned how to apologize for breathing too loudly. There were Sundays. Real Sundays. The kind that began with flour on the counter and music drifting through an open kitchen window. The kind where sunlight pooled across hardwood floors and laughter carried without restraint. Robert used to wake first. Elena could still see him in memory, barefoot, hair unruly, humming off-key while tying an apron around his waist. He took Sunday roast personally, said it was the one meal that deserved ceremony. "Ari," he would call down the hallway. "Inspection time. Is the chef's assistant present?" A small version of Ariana would come racing into the kitchen in mismatched socks, curls bouncing, eyes bright with purpose. "Ready, Dad." Robert would hand her a carrot and a child-sized peeler. "Precision, Lieutenant. No casualties." Elena would lean against the counter with her coffee, watching them like they were a private show staged just for her. Back then, Ariana filled space. She talked with her hands. She argued passionately about everything from school policies to whether Pluto deserved planetary status. She hated unfairness with a ferocity that startled teachers twice her size. In 4th grade, she wrote an essay defending a classmate who had been wrongly blamed for cheating. She marched into the principal's office, uninvited, and presented her evidence. Elena remembered kneeling to Ariana's height afterward. "You can't storm offices without appointments," Elena had said, trying not to smile. "They were wrong," Ariana insisted. No one was fixing it. Robert had crouched beside them, grinning. That's my girl. Their home had rules, but none built on fear. Voices were heard. Mistakes were discussed, not punished. Apologies meant accountability, not submission. Dinner was sacred. No phones, no interruptions. Just the three of them around a wooden table Robert had sanded and stained himself. Elena would ask, "What did you question today?" That was their ritual. Not, "What did you learn?" "What did you question?" Ariana would light up. "Mr. Delaney said we have to follow the textbook exactly. But science changes all the time, so why would we freeze it?" Robert would raise his glass of water in mock salute to rebellion in the name of progress. As Ariana grew, her curiosity sharpened into brilliance. Chemistry sets turned into science fairs. Science fairs turned into scholarships. She built her first functional battery prototype at 16 and insisted on explaining ion transfer at the dinner table until Elena pretended to fall asleep. "Mom," Ariana laughed. "It's revolutionary." "I'm sure it is," Elena teased. "But revolution can wait until after dessert." By university, Ariana was unstoppable. Chemical engineering, top of her class. Internships at firms that sent congratulatory letters addressed to both parents, as if excellence was a shared genetic accomplishment. Robert kept every one of them in a folder labeled, "Proof she'll change the world." The house had felt full then, not just of people, but of certainty. Elena had built her legal career defending women who walked into her office with bruises hidden beneath scarves and stories buried beneath shame. She taught them strategy, documentation, exit plans, safety routes. She stood in courtrooms and dismantled men who mistook control for authority. And at night, she came home to a daughter who debated molecular bonds with the same intensity Elena debated restraining orders. Strength raised strength, or so she believed. There had been one Sunday. Ariana was 22, freshly accepted into a prestigious research program, when Robert carved the roast with exaggerated solemnity. To Ariana, he declared, who has never once shrunk herself to make anyone comfortable. Ariana rolled her eyes, but her smile glowed. "I just don't like being wrong." Elena corrected gently. "No, you don't like injustice." Robert leaned across the table and tapped Ariana's temple. "Never trade this for approval." "I won't," she promised. That word, promised. It echoed now, years later, against the image of her daughter on a hardwood floor, hand pressed to a swelling cheek. Somewhere between then and now, something had cracked. But not in childhood. Not in that house. Because that house had been built on respect. Elena remembered the first time Ariana failed an exam in university. She had come home furious, not at the grade, but at herself. "I miscalculated the final equation," Ariana muttered, pacing. It was careless. Elena sat her down. "Failure isn't weakness," she said. "It's data." Robert added, "And data makes you better." They didn't shame her. They didn't diminish her. They fortified her. That was the environment Ariana came from. Not obedience, not silence, confidence, which made the transformation unbearable. Elena replayed the present version of her daughter in her mind, the careful tone, the quick apologies, the reflexive glance toward her husband before answering simple questions. That wasn't learned at their table. That wasn't inherited. That was conditioned. The contrast was violent. There had been no flinching in that girl who argued with principals. No shrinking in the teenager who corrected professors mid-lecture. No fear in the young woman who presented research to rooms full of skeptical executives. Elena could still hear Robert's voice on the porch one summer evening, watching Ariana pack for graduate school. "She'll never let anyone control her," he'd said confidently. Elena had believed it too. She had believed love and logic were permanent armor. But control rarely arrives loudly. It arrives charming, patient, incremental. And when Robert got sick, when hospital rooms replaced Sunday kitchens, Ariana's strength shifted into caretaking. She held her father's hand through chemo. She memorized medication schedules. She swallowed her fear so he wouldn't see it. After the funeral, the house felt cavernous. Elena returned to court within a month. Routine was survival. Ariana returned to work. Productivity was distraction. But grief leaves openings. Elena knew that professionally. Emotionally vulnerable women were more susceptible to manipulation. Isolation disguised as devotion. Protection disguised as love. She had lectured on it, written about it, warned others about it, and yet she had not seen it coming for her own child. The memory of young Ariana standing on a chair to reach the oven door felt almost mythic now. "Mom," little Ariana once asked, serious beyond her years, "why do women stay when someone hurts them?" Elena had answered carefully, "Because leaving is complicated. Then we make it less complicated," Ariana said simply. Elena closed her eyes in the present, feeling the weight of that innocent certainty. She had raised a daughter who believed escape was straightforward, who believed harm was obvious, who believed strength was permanent. But even strong women can be reshaped under the right pressure. Elena stared at an old photograph on her bookshelf later that night. The three of them, arms around each other, roast chicken on the table between them. Ariana mid-laugh. That girl had been bold, unapologetic, untamed, and somewhere along the years, she had been taught to lower her voice. Elena pressed her thumb gently over her daughter's smiling face in the photograph. Regret settled heavy in her chest. She had spent 3 decades guiding strangers toward freedom, drafting exit plans, winning custody battles, securing protection orders, standing a shield for women who thought they had none. And now she understood the bitter irony in her own reflection. "I taught women how to leave. I never imagined I'd have to teach my own daughter." Chapter 3. The Charming Man. The first time Ariana mentioned Mark, it was casual. They were sitting at Elena's kitchen table. Long after Robert's passing, the house quieter than it used to be, but still warm. Ariana had come over with Thai takeout and a laptop full of presentation slides. "There's this guy," she said absently, scrolling through emails. "Met him at the Boston Energy Systems conference." Elena didn't look up immediately. "There's always this guy at conferences." Ariana smiled faintly. "No, he's different." That word again. Different. Elena poured them both tea. "Different how?" He actually listened. It sounded simple, earnest, harmless. The conference had been 3 months earlier. Ariana had presented her research on sustainable chemical storage solutions. Complex, data-heavy, precise. She told the story animatedly that night. "I thought half the room was asleep," Ariana said, laughing. "But afterward he came up and asked about the polymer layering in Phase 2. "He understood it?" Elena asked. "Completely. Or at least he sounded like he did." Mark had introduced himself with easy confidence. "Mark Whitmore," he'd said, offering a hand. "Energy consultant. I've been waiting for someone to challenge the way we're doing things." Ariana told Elena how he'd held eye contact when she spoke, how he nodded at the right moments, how he referenced her data points without glancing at notes. He said it was one of the smartest presentations he'd seen. Ariana admitted, almost embarrassed. Elena raised a brow. "And you believed him?" Ariana grinned. "He quoted my own slide back to me, Mom." That was the beginning. He emailed her the next day. "Not flirtatious. Professional. I've been thinking about your thesis on layer containment. Would you ever consider private consultation? I'd value your insight." It was flattering without being overt. Strategic. They met for coffee, then dinner, then more conferences, some coincidental, some arranged. When Elena first met him, it was deliberate. Ariana insisted. "I want you to meet him properly," she'd said. "Not just a rushed hello." He arrived at Elena's home with a bottle of wine and a firm handshake. "Elena Vance," he said smoothly. "I've heard about you for years." "Oh," she replied evenly. "Your cases, your advocacy. You've changed legislation in this state." Flattery, but informed flattery. He didn't overdo it. Just enough. During dinner, he asked about her work with what seemed like genuine curiosity. "How do you stay neutral in emotionally charged cases?" he asked. "I don't," Elena said. "I stay strategic." He smiled. "That explains Ariana." Ariana rolled her eyes affectionately. "Don't analyze me. I admire strong women," Mark said lightly. "My mother raised me that way." Helen. At that time, Elena hadn't met her yet. Mark spoke of her with reverence. "She believes discipline builds character." Elena noted the word. Discipline. Still, nothing alarming. Mark was articulate, educated, well-groomed. He listened when others spoke, though sometimes Elena noticed he leaned in slightly too soon. When Ariana explained a research breakthrough, he would nod, then add, "What Ariana means is," before rephrasing her idea with minor adjustments. It was subtle. Ariana didn't seem to mind. Once, at a small dinner party with Ariana's colleagues, one of them congratulated her on a recent publication. "You carried that project," the colleague said. "Brilliant execution." Before Ariana could respond, Mark laughed lightly. "She works hard, but she'd be the first to admit I kept her sane through it." It was said jokingly. Everyone laughed. Ariana smiled. Elena watched. Another time, during dessert at Elena's house, Ariana began describing a grant proposal she drafted. Mark cut in gently. "We actually structured that together." Elena tilted her head. "You're in chemical engineering now." Mark smiled wider. "No, but collaboration strengthens everything." Ariana nodded quickly. "He just helped me organize my pitch." It was reasonable. Healthy couples collaborate. There was no overt cruelty, no raised voice, no visible dominance. But Elena had spent decades reading micro-expressions in courtrooms. Mark watched reactions, not casually, intentionally. When he told a story, his eyes flicked briefly around the room to measure impact. When someone laughed, his shoulders relaxed half a centimeter. When attention drifted, he recalibrated. His smile was practiced, charming, but it never reached his eyes. They remained observant, assessing. Still, he treated Ariana well in visible ways. Flowers at her office, surprise lunches, public praise on social media. Proud of this brilliant woman, he once posted under a photo of her presenting. Elena wanted to trust what she saw. Ariana was radiant in those early months. Lighter, hopeful. After Robert's death, that mattered. The engagement came quickly, just under a year. Mark proposed during a weekend trip to Vermont. Snow, fireplace, professional photographer coincidentally nearby. Ariana called Elena, breathless. "He asked me to build a life with him," she said. "Not just marry him. Build." The phrasing struck Elena as rehearsed. But Ariana sounded happy. Elena met Helen at the engagement dinner. Helen was polished, controlled, smiled with lips, not eyes. "You've raised a very accomplished daughter," Helen said, assessing Elena as much as praising her. "And you've raised a confident son," Elena replied evenly. Helen's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. The wedding planning moved swiftly. Mark insisted on efficiency. "No need to drag things out," he said. "When you know, you know." The ceremony was elegant, tasteful, perfectly orchestrated. Mark delivered vows that drew applause. "You challenge me," he told Ariana at the altar. "You refine me." Elena watched his face as he spoke. Still that measured smile. Still that careful scanning of the audience. At the reception, he toasted Ariana's ambition. "I married a woman who refuses to shrink," he declared. Guests cheered. Elena clapped. Yet something small and persistent pressed against her ribs. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't proof. It was absence. Absence of something she couldn't name. When Ariana laughed that night, it was joyful, but Elena noticed she glanced at Mark before speaking too long with anyone. When an old college friend hugged her tightly, Mark appeared beside them within seconds. Possessive or attentive, there was no overt crime, no obvious villain, just a man who fit well into photographs, who said the right things, who mirrored values convincingly, and a daughter who believed she had found partnership. After the honeymoon was booked and the thank you cards mailed, Elena stood alone in her kitchen one evening, holding an invitation-proof Ariana had left behind. The gold lettering gleamed under the light. She remembered Robert's voice years ago. Never trade this for approval. She wanted to believe Ariana hadn't. She wanted to believe charm was simply charm. Hope was easier. Hope was kinder. But as Elena folded the invitation carefully and slid it into a drawer, she felt it again, that quiet, unplaceable unease. Not loud enough to confront. Not solid enough to accuse. Just present. Lingering. Like a hairline fracture, you only notice when pressure is applied. Chapter 4, Greece. The photographs from Santorini were perfect. White buildings cascading down cliffs like spilled sugar. blue domes against the sky, so bright it looked artificial. Sunlight dancing over the Aegean in restless sheets of silver. Ariana had sent one to Elena the morning after they arrived. "We made it. It's unreal here." She was standing on a balcony in the picture, hair lifted by sea wind, laughing at something outside the frame. Mark had taken the photo. That mattered later. The first 3 days were effortless. They wandered narrow stone streets, shared plates of grilled octopus and feta, kissed under bougainvillea that spilled pink across white walls. Mark held her hand constantly, fingers laced tight enough to feel protective. "You deserve this," he told her on their second night. Wine glass tilted lazily between his fingers. "After everything with your dad, after all the pressure you carry." Ariana felt seen. "I don't carry pressure," she said lightly. Mark smiled. "You carry the world. I just want to make it lighter." It sounded romantic, generous, like partnership. On the fourth evening, they chose a restaurant perched near the water. Candlelit tables, linen napkins, soft Greek music drifting through warm air. A young waiter approached, polite and attentive. "Good evening." "Welcome," he said with a slight accent. "Celebrating something special?" "Our honeymoon," Ariana replied, grinning. The waiter's smile widened. "Congratulations. You chose the most beautiful place in the world." "Second most," Mark said smoothly, gesturing toward Ariana. "I married the first." The waiter laughed politely and took their order. It was harmless. Ariana barely thought about the exchange. Dinner passed easily at first. They clinked glasses, talked about future travel. Mark described investment opportunities in renewable energy markets. But when the waiter returned to refill their wine, Ariana asked about a dish she didn't recognize on another table. "What is that?" "It looks amazing." The waiter leaned slightly closer to explain, animated in description. Mark's jaw tightened almost invisibly. After the waiter left, Mark took a slow sip of wine. "You seemed very interested." "In the food?" Ariana laughed softly. "Yes, it looked good." "In him." The shift was so subtle she almost missed it. "What?" "The waiter," Mark clarified, voice still calm. "You were laying it on pretty thick." Ariana blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You were touching your hair, smiling like that." "Like what?" "Like you do." She laughed again, but uncertainty crept in. "Mark, I was asking about seafood." "You don't have to play innocent," he replied, still composed. "I saw it." The table suddenly felt smaller. "Mark, I wasn't flirting." He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Of course you don't think you were." There it was. The first fracture. Not an explosion. Not rage. Correction. Subtle, deliberate reframing. "I'm allowed to talk to people," Ariana said carefully. "Talk, yes. Perform? That's different." Her stomach tightened. "Perform. You enjoy attention," he said. "I get it. You're used to being admired." "That's not fair." He didn't raise his voice, didn't accuse loudly. He withdrew. Emotionally, his warmth cooled like someone adjusting a thermostat. Dinner ended in strained politeness. Mark paid without comment, his jaw set. Back at the hotel suite, he stood on the balcony alone. Ariana approached him cautiously. "Are we really fighting over this?" "I'm not fighting," he said, eyes fixed on the ocean. "I'm disappointed." The word stung more than anger would have. "Disappointed in what?" "In the way you present yourself." She stared at him. "I asked about a menu item. You leaned in. You lowered your voice." I didn't." Mark finally turned toward her. "You don't even see it," he said quietly. "That's the problem. Gaslighting rarely arrives shouting. It arrives calm, reasonable, measured." Ariana felt something unfamiliar creep into her chest. "Doubt. Maybe I was just being friendly," she offered weakly. "That's what I'm saying," he replied. "Too friendly." Silence stretched. Then came the shift. "Blame. You know, I've had trust issues," he continued. "My last relationship ended because of emotional betrayal." She hadn't known that. "You never told me." "I didn't want to burden you," he said, looking wounded now. "I thought I could trust my wife." Wife. The word carried weight. Ariana's defensiveness softened. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." "I know," he said. "You just don't always think." There it was. The subtle diminishment. She felt compelled to fix it. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For what?" "For if I made you uncomfortable. He let the silence linger just long enough. Then he exhaled slowly, as if granting mercy. Thank you, he said. That means a lot. The withdrawal ended. He stepped closer, brushing hair from her face. I just need to know you respect me. I do. Then protect what we have. The tension dissolved into an embrace. Cycle complete. The next morning, a velvet box sat beside her coffee. Inside, a delicate gold bracelet. For my stunning wife, the note read. So everyone knows you're taken. She smiled, half relieved. It's beautiful, she told him. He kissed her forehead. You're mine. I just want the world to remember that. Later that afternoon, they swam in the sea, laughter restored. That night, he was affectionate, attentive, passionate, reset. The incident blurred in memory. It was small, explainable. He had insecurities. She could accommodate them. That's what love did. But something subtle had shifted inside her. When the waiter passed their table the following evening, Ariana kept her eyes lowered. When she laughed, she checked Mark's expression. When she spoke to strangers, she moderated her tone. Not consciously, instinctively. A micro-adjustment. The first fracture of identity is rarely dramatic. It's quiet. A hairline crack beneath polished surface. Ariana would later struggle to pinpoint the exact moment things began to change. But if she traced it back honestly, it was there. Under Greek sky. Between accusation and apology. Between doubt and relief. She had apologized for something she hadn't done. And in doing so, she had moved one step closer to shrinking herself. Just a step. Just enough to keep the peace. Just enough to make him smile again. Chapter 5, The Isolation Strategy. It didn't happen all at once. That would have been obvious. Obvious things are easier to fight. Instead, it happened in adjustments. In tone. In suggestion. In concern disguised as care. It began with questions. How late are you staying tonight? Mark asked one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter while Ariana slipped off her heels. Just finishing the Palmer audit, she said. Probably 8. He frowned slightly. 8? With Daniel. Daniel was her department head. 52. Married. Mild-mannered. Yes. He's overseeing the review. Mark nodded slowly. He texts you a lot. They're work messages. I'm sure they are, he said gently. I just noticed patterns. There was that phrase again. Patterns. He stepped closer, brushing her arm lightly. You're brilliant, Ari. Men noticed that. She smiled faintly. That's kind of the point. He didn't smile back. I don't like the way he looks at you. She blinked. He doesn't look at me anyway. Mark shrugged. Maybe you don't see it. It wasn't an accusation. It was doubt planted like a seed. After that, she became hyper-aware of every professional interaction. When Daniel stood too close at a meeting, she stepped back. When he praised her work publicly, she downplayed it. At home, Mark began asking for details. Who was there? What were you wearing? Did anyone walk you to your car? Concern wrapped in intimacy. You're not upset, are you? She asked once. I'm protective, he corrected. The clothing commentary followed quietly. She emerged from the bedroom one morning in a fitted navy dress. Mark's eyes traveled over her, assessing. That's bold. It's a dress. It's tight. It's tailored. He tilted his head. You don't need to advertise. Advertise what? He stepped closer. You know exactly what. She changed. Not because she agreed. Because it was easier. He noticed immediately. That looks more professional, he said approvingly. Professional. Not beautiful. Not confident. Professional. The subtle digs at Elena came next. They were never direct. Just gentle reframing. You know your mom sees the worst in men, he said one night while scrolling through his phone. She sees patterns, Ariana replied automatically. Mark smiled thinly. Exactly. Another evening, after dinner at Elena's house, he commented in the car, she interrogates me. She's a lawyer. She doesn't trust easily. She's careful. He exhaled softly. Careful can turn into cynical. Ariana stared out the window. Do you think she likes me? He asked. She wouldn't let me marry you if she didn't. He was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes I feel like I'm competing with her. The idea unsettled her. You're not. She still has a lot of influence over you. She's my mother. And you're my wife. It sounded reasonable. Loyalty redefined. Then Robert got sick. The diagnosis came suddenly, brutally. Aggressive pancreatic cancer. Hospitals replaced vacations. Chemotherapy replaced Sunday dinners. Mark became attentive, present. He drove Ariana to every appointment, held her while she cried in sterile hallways, brought Elena coffee during long nights in waiting rooms. You don't have to be strong all the time, he whispered to Ariana when she broke down in their bedroom. Let me carry you. Grief is disorienting. It blurs judgment. When Robert died, something inside Ariana cracked open. The house felt hollow. Sunday roast stopped. Elena returned to court faster than Ariana expected. She's coping through work, Mark said quietly. It's her armor. Ariana nodded, swallowing her own grief. Mark tightened his hold around her. You don't need armor with me. He became gatekeeper. If your mom calls tonight, don't answer, he suggested gently once. You're exhausted. She has colleagues. Friends. You need rest. He said it softly, as if shielding her. Phone calls with Elena shortened. Visits spaced out. Not forbidden, just postponed. Then Helen moved. 3 blocks away. Close enough to walk. The first time she entered the house unannounced, Ariana was in the kitchen, hair tied messily, sleeves rolled. The door opened. Helen stepped inside as if she'd always owned a key. Oh, Ariana said, startled. I didn't hear you knock. I didn't, Helen replied calmly. Family doesn't knock. Mark appeared behind her moments later, smiling. Mom just wanted to check in. Helen surveyed the kitchen counters. You leave dishes soaking? She asked. I was going to. In my day, we cleaned immediately. Ariana forced a polite smile. Helen began stopping by twice a week. Then every other day. Commentary became routine. You should iron Mark's shirts yourself. It shows pride. You overseason the meat. A wife sets the tone of the home. Mark rarely intervened. He would kiss Ariana's temple and say, she just wants what's best. One afternoon, while folding laundry, Helen told a story. My husband had a temper, she said casually. Early on, he'd raise his voice. Ariana looked up. I learned how to manage it. Manage? Helen smiled faintly. You don't confront fire with fire. You remove oxygen. I don't understand. You anticipate moods. Adjust behavior. Prevent escalation. It sounded like strategy, not submission, but the line was thin. Men need respect, Helen continued. Especially strong men. Mark respects me, Ariana said quietly. Helen's gaze sharpened. Then make sure he never questions it. The house began to feel different. Smaller. Structured around avoiding tension. Ariana checked her phone before laughing at messages. She dressed neutrally. She filtered stories before telling them to Elena. When Elena invited her for dinner, Mark would sigh. We had plans. We could go another week. You don't want to look like you're running home. Running home. The phrasing stuck. Home was here now. With him. Helen began reorganizing kitchen cabinets for efficiency. She criticized Ariana's grocery choices. You waste money on organic labels. Mark nodded along. She's right. One evening, Elena called unexpectedly. Ariana's phone lit up on the coffee table. Mark glanced at it. You're not going to answer? I will. He watched her as she picked up. Hi, Mom. Sweetheart, I was thinking Sunday. Sunday's busy, Ariana said quickly, glancing at Mark. Elena paused. Oh, all right. The call ended sooner than it should have. Mark wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I just don't want outside noise interfering with us. Outside noise. Elena reduced to interference. Helen to authority. Mark to protector. And Ariana, caretaker. Moderator. Adjuster. The house was quiet that night. Controlled. Ordered. Mark locked the doors before bed, checking each one methodically. Safe, he said, satisfied. Ariana stood in the hallway, looking around at her own living room. Everything in place. Everything calm. Everything monitored. The house had become controlled territory. Chapter 6, The First Push. The house was supposed to be a symbol of beginning. They bought it 8 months after Robert's death. Ariana used most of her inheritance for the down payment. She told herself it was practical, real estate was stable, a shared investment in a shared future. Mark called it our foundation. But the paperwork told a quieter truth. The bulk of the money came from her. The first night they stood in the empty living room, sunlight stretching across bare floors. Mark wrapped his arms around her waist. "This is ours," he whispered. "Ours." The word felt safe then. They painted walls together, argued lightly over furniture, hosted small dinners where Mark played charming host and Helen offered unsolicited design critiques. The tension was subtle at first. A comment here, a correction there. But something had shifted since the purchase. Ownership does strange things to insecure men. The argument that led to the first push was ordinary. That was the terrifying part. It began over finances. Ariana sat at the kitchen island reviewing their joint account statements. "Mark," she said carefully, "there's a $20,000 transfer I don't recognize." He didn't look up from his phone. "Investment. Without telling me, I told you I was looking at opportunities. Looking isn't the same as moving money." His jaw tightened. "Why are you interrogating me?" "I'm asking. You don't trust me." She exhaled slowly. "This isn't about trust. It's about communication." He stood abruptly. "I handle strategy better than you. I handle chemical engineering projects worth millions," she replied, trying to stay calm. "I can understand a transfer." He stepped closer. "You don't need to control everything." "I'm not controlling. I'm asking for transparency." The room felt smaller suddenly. "You think because it was your inheritance you get to dictate terms?" The words sliced. "That's not what I said. But that's what you mean." "No." He moved toward her faster than she expected. His hand struck her shoulder, not a punch. A shove, hard enough that her back hit the wall behind her. The sound echoed. For a second, neither of them moved. Ariana stared at him. Shock flooded her body, freezing her in place. He looked almost startled himself. "You pushed me," she said quietly. "You were in my space. I was standing still. You came at me." "I didn't." His face hardened. "Don't exaggerate." She touched her shoulder where it had hit drywall. "I didn't exaggerate." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once. "You were escalating," he insisted. "You cornered me. I was sitting at the counter." "You know how you get," he snapped. Silence. She didn't know how she got. He stepped forward again, but slower now. "I didn't mean to shove you," he said, tone cooling. "You just kept pushing. I asked a question, and you wouldn't let it go." Her mind scrambled to reconcile the man in front of her with the one who held her in hospital corridors months earlier. This wasn't rage. It was justification. That night, he slept turned away from her. Emotional withdrawal. She lay awake staring at the ceiling. Maybe she had pressed too hard. Maybe her tone had sharpened. Maybe the self-doubt crept in like fog. The second incident happened 3 weeks later. It was over something even smaller. Helen had come by earlier that day and criticized Ariana's meal planning. "You're too career-focused," Helen said while rearranging pantry shelves. "Men need to feel prioritized." That evening, Mark complained the chicken was dry. "I followed the recipe," Ariana said quietly. "You don't listen," he replied. "I do. You argue." "I'm explaining." He slammed his fork down. "Why does everything have to be a debate?" "It doesn't. You can't just say sorry." The word again. "Sorry. For what?" she asked carefully. "For ruining a simple dinner." Her chest tightened. "It's just chicken." His chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood. "You're dismissive." "I'm tired." "So, come on." She opened her mouth to respond. The punch came fast. Not a shove. A closed fist. It connected with her jaw. The force knocked her sideways, vision flashing white. For a second, she didn't understand what had happened. Then pain bloomed. Deep. Immediate. Her hand flew to her face. Mark stood frozen, breathing hard. He started. She tasted blood. "You hit me," she whispered. "You provoked me." He shot back reflexively. The words landed almost harder than the punch. He stepped back, running both hands over his face. "I can't believe you made me do that." "Made me?" Her ears rang. Tears filled her eyes, not dramatic, not loud. Just silent. He stared at her swelling jaw. "God, Ari," he muttered. "Why do you push me like this?" She slid down onto a chair, dizzy. He paced again. Then came the shift. Guilt. Panic. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean it. I just snapped." He knelt in front of her. "I've been under pressure. Work's been insane. Mom keeps saying you don't respect me." Her mind struggled to process the collision of apology and blame. "I respect you," she murmured. Then show it, he said, gripping her hands. Don't undermine me. There it was. Responsibility transferred. Helen arrived the next morning. Mark had called her. Ariana stood in the bathroom, holding ice to her jaw when Helen entered without knocking. Oh, Helen said calmly, assessing the bruise forming along Ariana's cheekbone. It was an accident, Mark said quickly from the hallway. Helen stepped closer, examining Ariana's face with clinical detachment. You'll need concealer, she said. Yellow undertone. Ariana stared at her reflection. Helen opened a makeup bag she'd brought. I learned tricks early in my marriage, she said conversationally while dabbing foundation carefully over the swelling. Men lose control sometimes. Ariana flinched as Helen pressed too hard. Marriage is about endurance. The words settled heavily. Endurance. Not safety. Not respect. Endurance. Mark hovered near the doorway, remorseful expression carefully in place. I hate that I hurt you, he said softly. You know I love you. Love. The word felt distorted. Helen finished blending the makeup and stepped back. There, she said. No one will notice. Ariana looked at herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back. But leaving felt bigger than staying. Leaving meant failure. Public explanation. Divorce stigma. Whispers about her inability to make it work. She thought of her father, of stability, of how hard her mother had fought in courtrooms for other women. Shame flooded her. How could she, strong, educated, independent, admit this? It was one punch, one shove. He apologized. He bought her flowers that evening, booked a couple's therapy session, promised to manage his temper, cried, held her like she was breakable. The cycle had crossed a threshold. It was no longer theoretical. It was physical, and Ariana told herself it would never happen again. Chapter 7. After the arrest. The house felt different with Ariana back in it. Not the same as when she was young. Not light. Not loud. Fragile. Elena had made up the guest room with clean sheets and an extra blanket, though the weather didn't require it. Protection was instinctual. Comfort was strategy. Ariana sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped between her knees, staring at nothing. Her cheek was still faintly swollen. The arrest had been 48 hours ago. Mark had posted bail within 12. Helen had called 3 times before Elena blocked the number. Now the silence was heavy. Elena, Ariana said softly, not looking up. She hadn't called her mom since the arrest. Did I overreact? Elena didn't answer immediately. She was seated in the armchair by the window, posture straight, expression calm in a way that unnerved opposing counsel. 3 slaps, Elena said evenly. A shove. In front of witnesses. It sounds worse when you say it like that. It is worse. Ariana swallowed. He said I embarrassed him. By spilling water? By correcting him earlier about the mortgage rate. He said I undermined him. Elena's jaw tightened slightly. Ariana continued, voice small. He said I always make him feel inadequate. And do you? I don't try to. That wasn't the question. Silence. Ariana's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Both women looked at it. Mark. Again. Ariana hesitated before unlocking the screen. Text after text. I'm in therapy already. You know my father used to hit my mom. I'm trying to break the cycle. You can't destroy everything we built over one mistake. Call me. Privately. We don't need your mother involved. Then, you're ruining my life. Ariana's hands trembled. He keeps saying I'm overreacting, she whispered. That couple's fight. Elena leaned forward slightly. Couples fight. They don't assault. He says he blacked out. He didn't black out. He calibrated. Ariana flinched. You didn't see his face, she said quickly. It wasn't rage. It was control, Elena finished. Tears filled Ariana's eyes. I keep thinking about Greece, she admitted. About the waiter. About how I apologized. Elena stayed quiet. He made me feel like I was careless. Like I provoked things. That's called gaslighting, Elena said calmly. Ariana laughed bitterly through tears. I know the term. I just never thought that it applied to you. She nodded. Her phone buzzed again. A voicemail this time. Mark's voice filled the room, low and urgent. Ari, please. I'm begging you. This isn't us. This is stress. Trauma. I'm getting help. Don't let your mother twist this into something it's not. We can fix this. Just meet me. Alone. Ariana pressed stop. He says you hate him. Elena's voice remained steady. He needs you isolated to regain leverage. He says I'm his anchor. And when anchors resist, controlling men cut the rope or sink the ship. Ariana covered her face with both hands. I don't recognize myself, she said through her palms. I used to argue with professors. Now I apologize for breathing wrong. Elena's chest tightened at that. Tell me everything, she said quietly. And Ariana did. The waiter in Greece. The comments about her boss. The clothing adjustments. The subtle digs about Elena. The push. The punch. Helen's makeup sponge pressing into her bruise. Marriage is about endurance, Ariana whispered, repeating it as if testing its absurdity aloud. Elena closed her eyes briefly. He said if I left, people would think I couldn't maintain a marriage, Ariana added. That divorce would follow me professionally. That's fear-based conditioning. I believed him. You were conditioned to. Ariana looked up, eyes red. I loved who he was in the beginning. Elaborate. He admired me, said I was strong. And later, he said strong women need boundaries. Elena exhaled slowly. The phone rang downstairs. Not Ariana's. The landline. Elena stood. I'll get it. She picked up in the kitchen. Elena Vance. A male voice responded smoothly. This is Charles Dunham, old friend of the Whitmores. Elena's tone cooled. What can I do for you, Mr. Dunham? I'd advise you to reconsider the charges. Mark is a promising figure in this community. Mistakes happen. Mistakes are forgetting anniversaries, Elena replied. Assault is intentional. A pause. You don't want this escalating publicly, Dunham continued. It won't reflect well on your daughter. Are you threatening me? I'm suggesting discretion. Elena's voice sharpened. Do not call this number again. She hung up. War. It had begun. By morning, official paperwork arrived. A civil defamation suit. $2 million. Mark claiming false accusations damaged his career. Ariana stared at the documents, pale. He's suing me. He's attempting intimidation, Elena corrected. It's a pressure tactic. Later that afternoon, Elena received notification that the temporary restraining order had been suspended pending review. The magistrate on duty, Elena muttered, scanning the name. Mark's uncle. Ariana's breathing quickened. He's untouchable. No one is untouchable, Elena replied evenly. But he has connections. And I have evidence. Elena began organizing files across her dining table with mechanical precision. Police report, medical photos, audio recording from dinner, text messages, timeline documentation. They're trying to exhaust you, Elena explained while sorting papers. Legal pressure, social pressure, emotional guilt. Ariana stood beside her, watching the system she'd once only heard about in abstract terms come alive around her. He said if I go through with this, I'll regret it. Of course he did. He said no one will believe me. Elena met her daughter's eyes. I believe you. The simplicity of it broke something open. Ariana began to cry, not quietly this time, but fully. I'm embarrassed, she confessed. How did I not see it? Because manipulation doesn't announce itself, Elena said gently. It erodes. The phone buzzed again. Another text. We can fix this. Don't let pride ruin us. Elena glanced at the screen. Notice the pattern, she said. Apology. Trauma excuse. Blame shift. Isolation request. Ariana wiped her cheeks. It feels like he's still in my head. That's intentional. Elena placed a hand over her daughter's. This isn't just emotional now, she said. It's strategic. Outside, a car slowed near the curb before driving on. Inside, legal documents covered the table like battle plans. Ariana looked smaller than she had 2 days ago, but steadier. They're going to fight this, she said quietly. Yes, Elena replied. And if they win? Elena's expression didn't change. They won't. Across town, Mark was already assembling his narrative. Helen was calling acquaintances. The magistrate uncle was maneuvering. The lawsuit was filed. The restraining order challenged. The intimidation had begun, and the war escalated. Chapter 8, The Counterattack. Elena's office was silent, except for the soft hum of the computer and the occasional rustle of papers. Every document, Every note, every photograph, every recording she had meticulously gathered over the past week was spread across the table like a battlefield map. Ariana sat across from her, hands clasped, eyes wide but attentive. "This is everything," Elena said, pointing to the pile. "Medical reports, neighbor statements, texts, photos from the scene. I've cross-referenced dates with flight logs, bank statements, hotel receipts. Every instance, every pattern, every manipulation, they're all here." Ariana leaned in, voice trembling. "It feels like a mountain. How do we even start?" Elena smiled faintly, the corner of her mouth lifting in a controlled, cold way. "You don't climb a mountain by staring at it. You take one step at a time, and we're already moving." She began with a detailed timeline of the abuse. "Look," Elena said, tapping the first page. "This is March 20th, your birthday dinner. Slaps, shove, Helen's applause, my immediate call to law enforcement. That's the anchor event. Every subsequent manipulation, every gaslighting incident, every bruise and push falls into place relative to this." Ariana swallowed hard. "And the Greece incident? Documented," Elena replied firmly. "Emails, messages, the honeymoon photos, cross-reference to the alleged friendly behavior you were accused of. It shows a pattern. Accusation, emotional withdrawal, blame, gift, intimacy. Cycle repeats. Consistent. Predictable. Damning." Elena moved to the next pile. Medical records confirm injuries, shoulder, jaw, cheek. Neighbors witnessed arguments and unusual activity. Phone recordings capture verbal manipulation, threats, apologies designed to reset the dynamic. Pattern documentation will demonstrate intent. Ariana's fingers trembled as she picked up a phone transcript. "He keeps saying he's changed. Therapy, childhood trauma." Elena's eyes didn't leave the papers. "Exactly. We'll show the court these aren't random messages. They're tactics, calculated, designed to confuse, disorient, and isolate you. That's why documentation matters more than emotion. Evidence, not feeling, wins here." The phone buzzed again, and Ariana ignored it. She had stopped opening Mark's messages. Elena continued her methodical preparation. Step 2. Appeal the suspension of the restraining order. The magistrate uncle attempted to exploit a loophole. We'll argue procedural error and provide indisputable proof of ongoing danger. No ambiguity. No gaps. By late afternoon, the filing was ready. Elena handed Ariana a copy. "See this? We're not just reinstating the order. We're making it stricter. Full restrictions. No contact. Any breach, immediate arrest." Ariana exhaled, relief faint but present. "And the counterclaim? $8 million. Elena's tone was sharp, precise. "Defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and now aggravated domestic violence charges. The pattern is clear. Repeated abuse. Threats. Attempted manipulation of the legal system through family influence and intimidation." Ariana blinked. $8 million. "It's not about the money," Elena corrected. "It's leverage, public and legal. It signals consequences. He cannot act above the law. We're applying pressure where it matters most, legally and reputationally." Elena's attention shifted to Helen's latest maneuver. Social smear attempts. Flyers distributed near Ariana's workplace. Subtle rumors in the neighborhood. Emails to acquaintances claiming Ariana fabricated events for attention. "She's trying to isolate you further," Elena explained. "We'll document every communication, every attempt, every smear. They'll see her for what she is. Complicit in abuse, attempting to manipulate public perception to shield her son." Ariana's lips pressed together. "It's exhausting just thinking about it." Elena leaned forward, voice low and steady. "Noise isn't power. Evidence is. Documents, witnesses, patterns, recorded facts. These are immutable. Reputation will bend to truth eventually. Let the gossip run. We are building irrefutable proof. That is how you win." Ariana nodded slowly, beginning to feel a tentative spark of control returning. Elena continued. "Mark's allies, his influential friends, they'll try intimidation. Threats. Calls. appeals to authority. We'll counter everything. Professionally, methodically, legally. Every move they make, we anticipate. Every misstep, we document. Every attempt to sway opinion, we neutralize with evidence. Her hands moved over the papers with fluid certainty. Neighbor testimony confirms patterns. Friends corroborate instances of control and isolation. Texts prove repeated threats and emotional manipulation. Medical reports tie physical injury to timeline. Everything intersects. Everything reinforces the narrative of abuse and intentional harm. Ariana's voice cracked. So they can't just claim it's my word against his? Elena's gaze hardened. Exactly. That's the point. It's never just your word. It's a full body of evidence, meticulously collected, cross-referenced, and ready for scrutiny. They cannot dismiss it. The hours passed in a quiet intensity. Elena spoke calmly, precisely, but every word carried the weight of strategy and command. Ariana listened, taking notes, asking questions, learning for the first time what it truly meant to fight someone like Mark in a way that couldn't be undermined by charm or influence. At dusk, the living room was scattered with papers, charts, and printouts. The late afternoon sunlight slanted across the evidence timeline, illuminating each photograph and document with an almost symbolic clarity. Ariana leaned back in her chair, exhausted. It feels overwhelming but possible. Elena reached out, touching her daughter's hand. It is possible. You're not alone. And most importantly, you are prepared. Every piece is in place. Every argument backed. Every tactic anticipated. Ariana's eyes softened slightly. Do you really think we can stop him? Elena's expression didn't waver. Calm. Calculated. Certain. We will not just stop him. We will ensure accountability. Public and legal. Helen cannot shield him, and his friends cannot intimidate us. The truth will be evident. Every lie, every manipulation, every act of violence, documented and undeniable. Ariana nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She felt, for the first time in months, a flicker of empowerment, a sense that her life could shift back into her own hands. Elena gathered the final documents into neat folders. Tomorrow, we file the counterclaim, escalate the domestic violence charges, and present the court with indisputable evidence of ongoing risk and manipulation. Every call, text, medical record, and witness statement will be part of the record. Ariana exhaled deeply, almost laughing through relief. I feel like I can breathe a little. Elena smiled, faint but sharp. Good. Hold on to that. This is just the beginning of the legal front. But remember, control in court, control in life, starts with preparation and evidence. Noise, threats, social smears, they mean nothing compared to this. She looked directly at Ariana. Noise is not power. Evidence is. Chapter 9, Ariana's Breaking Point. The apartment felt impossibly quiet that evening. The muted hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the floorboards were the only sounds. Ariana sat cross-legged on the couch, phone balanced on her knees, eyes fixed on the screen but seeing nothing. Her mind was a cyclone of conflicting thoughts. Was it really that bad? She asked herself for the 100th time. Maybe 3 slaps aren't. Maybe it's not that severe. Maybe he really can change. The questions spun endlessly, circling her, sharpening her anxiety. She rubbed her temples, staring blankly at the pale walls. Every message from Mark felt like a stone thrown into a lake of doubt, rippling outward until she couldn't tell where her own feelings ended and his manipulation began. Elena entered quietly, holding a mug of chamomile tea. She sat down beside Ariana without comment, letting the silence stretch before speaking. You're thinking in loops, Elena said gently, placing the mug within reach. Was it really that bad? Maybe it wasn't. Her voice mimicked Ariana's inner doubts before she cut it off. Stop. Stop pretending to question facts that are obvious. Ariana flinched. I can't stop thinking maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I misread it all. Elena shook her head slowly. No, you didn't misread it. Do you know what it's like for victims to minimize abuse? It's instinct. Self-preservation. Your brain tries to normalize the abnormal. Ariana picked up her phone again. Text after text from Mark were still visible, some pleading, some blaming, some threatening. I'm in therapy. I'm changing. Don't let your mother ruin us. You're destroying my life. She scrolled slowly, each message digging a little deeper into old wounds. Her stomach twisted. The texts that once seemed like concern now looked like what they were. Carefully engineered manipulations. Promises of therapy, stories of childhood trauma, self-victimization, all designed to keep her tethered. I loved him, Ariana whispered, voice breaking. I loved him so much. I wanted to fix him. I wanted us to be happy. Elena's hand rested lightly on her daughter's arm. I know, love doesn't make someone blind, but it can make someone hopeful in dangerous ways. Hope is the hook they use. Ariana's tears flowed freely now. What if he changes? What if he really does try? Statistics don't lie, Elena said firmly. She opened a file on the table and handed Ariana a printed sheet. Women who return to abusive partners are 3 times more likely to experience severe escalation. Many end up hospitalized. Some don't survive. Leaving is the only chance to break the cycle. Ariana stared at the numbers, her hand trembling. Her pulse thudded loudly in her ears. She could feel every past compromise, every excuse, every apology, every act of self-blame she had carried over the years. I thought I could fix him, she said, voice quivering. I thought I could manage it. I thought maybe I deserved it for failing somehow. Elena shook her head, letting the words land. No, you didn't fail. You were manipulated, gaslight, coerced into doubt. Look at this objectively, Ariana. That's why we documented everything, because when emotion fails, facts remain. Facts protect you. Ariana blinked, staring at the evidence, then at her phone. Her hands hovered over it before she began to reread every single message from Mark since the arrest. The narrative unfolded clearly for the first time. Blame shifting, emotional blackmail, subtle threats, promises of love and change, all consistent, deliberate, cyclical. Her throat tightened. The illusion shattered. She could see it all now. The honeymoon, the Greece incident, the push, the punch, the apologies, the gifts, they weren't isolated mistakes. They were patterns, rehearsed and repeated. Ariana's fingers hovered over the screen. Slowly, deliberately, she tapped Mark's contact and blocked him. No more messages, no more manipulations. The phone slid from her hands, resting silent and inert on the couch. She rose, her movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. Her gaze fell on the photograph wall, wedding photos, vacations, images of Mark smiling as though nothing had ever gone wrong. She picked them up one by one. Tears streamed freely as she pressed them to her chest. Then, with a measured breath, she placed them all in a box, locked it, moved it to the back of a closet. A physical boundary, a symbolic one. She would no longer carry his memory as a chain. The wedding ring on her finger caught the soft light from the lamp. Her fingers lingered on it, remembering promises, hopes, and love she had poured into it. Slowly, carefully she slid it off, held it for a moment, staring at its cold, unyielding circle, and then placed it on the table beside the photos. For the first time in years, she felt space in her chest. Empty but free. No anxiety creeping beneath her skin, no questions of doubt, no compulsion to interpret every word he said as truth. The room was hers again. Elena watched quietly, offering neither comment nor judgment. This was Ariana's reclaiming, not hers to narrate. Ariana sank back onto the couch, hands folded in her lap, eyes red but clear. She inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of control lifting, replaced by clarity. She had ended contact, removed the symbols of her marriage, and with each act, each deliberate choice, she reclaimed pieces of herself that had been manipulated, gaslight, and buried. I'm done, she whispered, almost to herself. I'm done being afraid. I'm done waiting for him to change. I'm done questioning myself. Elena placed a gentle hand over hers. Good. That's the first step to taking back your life. One clear, deliberate boundary at a time. And you've just taken several. Ariana nodded, allowing herself a small, exhausted smile. For the first time in weeks, there was no anxiety pressing against her chest, no invisible tether pulling her back into a cage of manipulation, only the quiet awareness of autonomy. She looked around at the room, the apartment that felt like hers now, and felt the beginnings of a real, unshakable foundation for herself. The phone buzzed again. Ariana ignored it. The temptation to check it was still there, a reflexive muscle memory, but she did not. She stood, moving to the window, letting the city lights stretch out before her. Her hand rested lightly on the sill, her gaze steady. No more doubts, no more excuses, no more half-believed hopes of change. The steps were small, but the symbolism was monumental. Blocked mark, deleted photos, removed wedding ring, reclaimed herself. Chapter 10, The War Isn't Over. The courthouse was a gray, imposing structure, its stone steps worn smooth by decades of foot traffic. Elena and Ariana ascended them side by side, the morning chill biting at their cheeks. Reporters milled nearby, cameras already capturing the early arrivals, but neither mother nor daughter acknowledged them. Today wasn't about performance, it was about precision. Inside the courtroom, the air was tense, electric with anticipation. Mark entered with practiced ease, adjusting his tie and smiling at the gallery as though he were greeting friends at a gala. His mother, Helen, followed behind, posture rigid, eyes scanning the room like a general assessing her troops. Elena stood quietly with Ariana in the plaintiff section, hands folded, expression calm. She didn't need theatrics. The mountain of evidence behind them spoke louder than any display of emotion. The preliminary hearing began with procedural formalities. The judge, a stern woman with a reputation for meticulous fairness, called the case. "Mr. Vance, you understand the charges?" the judge asked. Mark bowed slightly, voice smooth. "Yes, Your Honor, but I maintain that many claims are exaggerated. Misunderstandings occur in every household." Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. She knew the tactic, minimization. Charm is armor. Helen was first to testify. She spoke with practiced confidence, weaving a narrative that tried to absolve her son. "Ariana is a sensitive woman," Helen said, hands clasped over the witness stand. "She tends to overreact. Mark is passionate. He didn't intend to harm anyone." Elena listened carefully, nodding subtly to herself. When her turn came, she rose slowly, her movements precise and deliberate, like a surgeon approaching the operating table. "Your Honor," Elena began, voice calm but carrying through the courtroom, "the testimony just heard is inconsistent with multiple verified pieces of evidence. Physical injuries corroborated by medical professionals, eyewitness accounts, and recorded communications all indicate deliberate and repeated abuse. It is not a matter of passion or misunderstanding. It is a documented pattern." She walked to the evidence table, spreading timelines, photos, and transcripts in full view. These documents illustrate a cycle: verbal abuse, isolation, physical intimidation, apologies, and attempts to reset control. This pattern is recognized in studies of domestic abuse as a strategy to maintain power over a partner. Each claim made in Mr. Vance's defense is contradicted by documented reality. Mark shifted slightly in his chair, his confident smile beginning to falter. Helen's face tightened as Elena continued. "Furthermore, communications from Mr. Vance himself admit to therapy, stress, and childhood trauma. But these messages coincide with attempts to contact Ariana privately and manipulate her perception of events. It is not remorse, it is strategy." The judge leaned forward, scanning the evidence. "Ms. Vance, are you asserting that the restraining order previously issued should be reinstated in full?" "Yes, Your Honor," Elena said, "and expanded if possible. The risk to Ariana remains demonstrable and ongoing." After a pause, the judge nodded. "The court will enforce the full restraining order, including prohibitions on contact by Mr. Vance and any attempt to influence or intimidate Ms. Ariana Vance. Additionally, criminal charges related to assault and aggravated domestic violence will proceed as filed." Mark's posture stiffened, the charm slipping from his features like water from a stone. Helen opened her mouth, clearly wanting to object, but the judge's gaze cut through her. Outside the courtroom, the air felt charged with tension. Reporters clamored, cameras flashing. Mark and Helen emerged behind Elena and Ariana, attempting a last-ditch display of bravado. Mark leaned close, voice low, words sharp with menace. "This isn't over. You haven't seen the last of me." Elena turned slowly, her expression calm, almost serene, voice measured but cold. "You mistook silence for weakness." He flinched, just slightly, then looked away, understanding finally that the calculated quiet she maintained was not fear, it was strategy. Ariana glanced up at her mother, eyes wide but steady. The weight of weeks of manipulation, threats, and fear had begun to lift. They walked down the courthouse steps together, the sunlight catching Ariana's hair and the resolve in Elena's stride. They were not victorious yet. The criminal proceedings loomed, and the counterclaims would take months to resolve. But they were aligned, clear, and prepared. No longer victims of uncertainty or fear, they had claimed the first decisive advantage: clarity, evidence, and resolve. Ariana squeezed her mother's hand gently as they reached the bottom of the steps. "We're really doing this," she whispered. "Yes," Elena said, voice soft but firm. "And we're doing it right. Every step accounted for, every move anticipated." A flash of sunlight hit the courthouse facade, reflecting off the stone steps like a spotlight. Elena looked at her daughter, then back at the street where Mark and Helen lingered, trying to project confidence that had long since evaporated. The cameras clicked incessantly, capturing their descent. But Elena's mind was already calculating the next move, planning the legal advance, reviewing the evidence once more in her mental ledger. She had spent 32 years mastering the courtroom, predicting human behavior, and dismantling lies. This was no different. Ariana matched her stride, shoulders squared, eyes forward. The heaviness in her chest was gone, replaced by a steel-hard determination to reclaim her life completely. She knew the fight would continue, but she was no longer alone, no longer unsure, no longer paralyzed by fear. Elena's mind wandered briefly to the opening dinner, the one that started everything. The betrayal, the violence, the arrogance. How many thought a slap, a shove, or a threat could intimidate a woman whose life was built on law, strategy, and relentless preparation? As they stepped onto the curb, Elena's gaze fell on the distant courthouse doors, then back at her daughter. She spoke quietly, a statement that carried both warning and inevitability. They started a fight at a dinner table. They forgot I've spent 32 years finishing them in court.